The boardroom fell silent when Dr. Lewis dropped his diagnosis, Stage 4. The once invincible CEO, Mr. Carter, felt the room grow cold as if all the air had been sucked out. His pen slipped from his fingers, and the only sound that followed was its faint tap on the table. The men who once applauded his every idea now shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their gazes falling to the polished floor. Within hours, word spread through the company: their leader, the man who built an empire from nothing, was dying. At first, people whispered words of sympathy, but soon the sympathy turned into silence. Business partners stopped returning calls. Investors withdrew their money, unwilling to tie their future to a man with no future of his own. Within a few weeks, Carter's empire began to crumble like a sandcastle against a rising tide. His wife, unable to face the slow fading of the man she had married, filed for divorce. Her last words were not of love or regret but of practicality: "You need someone who can take care of you, and I can't." His son, a college student with dreams of his own, stopped visiting as the weight of his father's illness became too much to bear. The house that once echoed with laughter and late-night conversations turned into a quiet, sterile space filled only with the hum of medical machines and the rustle of documents he no longer had the strength to read. At work, things grew worse. Employees who once greeted him warmly now avoided eye contact, afraid to be reminded of their own fragility. The corner office, once a place of strategy and ambition, became a cell of solitude. The walls that had witnessed his victories now seemed to close in, suffocating him with the memories of better days. Every morning, Carter sat behind his desk staring at the empty chair across from him, the one his son used to occupy during weekend visits when he proudly called his father the strongest man in the world. Now, even that chair seemed to mock him with its emptiness. He tried to focus on work, on the numbers, the deals, the endless reports. But the ink on the paper blurred with his tears. His hands trembled when he lifted his coffee mug, and the taste had long turned bitter. There was a day when he collapsed mid-meeting, gasping for breath. When he opened his eyes in the office infirmary, no one stood beside him. No partner, no friend, no family. Only the sound of distant typing echoed through the hall. He realized, in that moment, that success had bought him everything, except love. Days blurred into nights, and hope began to fade. He stopped coming to meetings. The staff learned to walk quietly past his door. Some said he had lost his mind, others said he was waiting to die. But one morning, when he arrived late to his office, something unexpected caught his eye. On his desk sat a simple bowl of steaming soup. Next to it was a small note, written in neat handwriting: "You're not alone, sir." He looked around, confused. There was no one in sight, only the faint scent of detergent and the sound of a mop being dragged down the hallway. Later, he found out it was Samuel, the janitor who had worked there for years, a man most people barely noticed. Samuel didn't ask questions, didn't speak much. But the next day, another bowl appeared. And then another. Sometimes it was soup, sometimes it was tea, sometimes a sandwich wrapped neatly in foil. No messages, no pity, just quiet acts of kindness. At first, Carter felt embarrassed. Why would a man like Samuel care about him? But as days passed, that small gesture became his only comfort. The warmth of the soup reminded him of home, of family dinners long gone. It made him feel human again. He began to wait for it, even to smile at the thought that someone, somewhere, still cared. And for the first time in months, when he looked at that empty chair across from him, he didn't see loneliness, he saw the faint, fragile spark of hope beginning to return. The boardroom fell silent when Dr. Lewis dropped his diagnosis, Stage 4. The word seemed to echo endlessly in the air. Mr. Carter, the man who once stood tall as the symbol of strength and success, felt everything around him blur. His pen rolled off the table and hit the floor, but no one dared to move. The people who had once looked at him with admiration now couldn't even meet his eyes. They shifted uncomfortably in their seats, whispering under their breath. Within hours, everyone knew. The unstoppable CEO was dying. Soon, the calls stopped coming. The meetings were cancelled. Investors began pulling their shares, and partners who once boasted about their connection to him started to disappear one by one. In the first week, Carter tried to act strong. He told himself he could still fight this, that money could buy the best doctors, the best treatments, the best hope. But as days passed, he realized there were things his fortune couldn't fix. The silence of his phone became deafening. His assistant stopped updating him about meetings. The company he built from nothing was beginning to slip through his fingers, and he was too weak to stop it. The pain wasn't just in his body, it was in his heart, watching everything he had ever worked for fall apart. At home, things were no better. His wife, who once stood by him through sleepless nights and endless workdays, couldn't handle watching him fade. One evening, she came into his room holding a folder. "I can't do this anymore," she said softly, placing divorce papers on his nightstand. He didn't argue. He simply nodded, staring blankly at the documents. Their love had been replaced by pity and exhaustion, and that was harder to endure than the disease itself. His son, who had been studying abroad, called less and less. At first, Carter told him he was fine, that everything was under control. But as the weeks went on, his son stopped asking. Eventually, he stopped calling altogether. Now, every morning, Carter sat behind his massive glass desk, staring at the city skyline. The view that once made him proud now only reminded him of how small he felt. His office, once full of life and purpose, was now empty, just like him. The chair across from his desk remained untouched, the same one his son used to sit in during visits when he was younger. Carter could still remember those weekends, the laughter, the stories, the feeling of being needed. But now, all that remained was silence and regret. The world he once ruled had moved on without him. His health began to decline faster than anyone expected. He could no longer attend meetings or even walk without support. Employees passed him in the hallway but pretended not to notice. No one wanted to face the truth that their leader was dying. He stopped going to the cafeteria because he couldn't bear the way people looked away when he entered. Loneliness became his closest companion. Then one morning, when he walked into his office, something unusual caught his attention. On his desk sat a small bowl of steaming soup. There was a handwritten note beside it that said, "You're not alone, sir." Carter froze. He looked around, but no one was there. The handwriting was simple, shaky, and honest. He picked up the note and read it again. For the first time in weeks, he felt warmth spread through his chest. It wasn't the soup, it was the thought that someone cared. Later, he discovered it was Samuel, the old janitor who worked the night shift. Samuel had been there for years, cleaning offices long after everyone had gone home. He wasn't a man of many words, but he noticed things others ignored. The next day, another bowl appeared. This time, it was chicken broth. Then the next day, vegetable soup. Every morning, Carter found something waiting for him, a small act of kindness that no one else dared to show. At first, Carter felt embarrassed. He was the CEO, and here he was, being cared for by the janitor. But the shame slowly turned into gratitude. Those small gestures began to mean more than any deal or contract ever had. The soup reminded him that humanity still existed, that compassion came from the most unexpected places. Each spoonful carried warmth, comfort, and silent understanding. Carter started looking forward to mornings again. He waited to see what Samuel would bring next, not for the food itself, but for the reminder that he was still seen, still valued. And so, in that quiet office where everything else had abandoned him, one man's kindness became the light that pulled him back from despair. The soup wasn't just a meal, it was a message, one that told him he still mattered, even when the world had forgotten.